You're watching Talking Points, a focus on the political scene in Lubbock and across the South Plains.
Welcome back. Here's a look at some of the political headlines of the past week. Time is ticking for adults who were brought to the U.S. legally when they were young to get the same protection afforded to those dreamers currently allowed to stay in the U.S. Many are facing deportation as they've essentially aged out of the immigration system backlog, leading to problems securing long-term citizenship. 250,000 documented immigrants in the U.S. right now fall in this specific category. Texas is home to about 10,000. And it's more dangerous and deadly to be a new mother in Texas than in many other states. A new report details what the state is doing about it. It says cardiovascular and coronary problems, as well as mental disorders, are the leading cause of death for women who die giving birth in Texas. The state now working to make telemedicine and transportation more accessible and creating a postpartum mental health treatment referral network. And the conversation surrounding adoption in Texas is different this year because of the Supreme Court Roe v. Wade decision. A panel moderated by the Texas Public Policy Foundation shed some light on some key barriers that make adopting harder, namely extensive paperwork, the cost, and not enough money put into programs to help with the adoption process. Only a couple bills have been filed so far this next session to fix this, but there could be more to come.
Every power from the purse to investigation and, if and when appropriate, impeachment, so that we can get our colleagues in Washington to have the same sense of urgency that our fellow Texans have.
A promise made to Texans this week. Their representatives in the U.S. House will work to secure the southern border. Congressman Jody Arrington leading the Texas Republican delegation in unveiling its border security plan, a commitment to secure the southern border during the 118th Congress from the front of the U.S. Capitol. Let's take a look.
It's overwhelming, really. It's every facet of our community and our society. I mean, the hospitals are overrun, the schools are overrun, our law enforcement are overrun, and they're getting no help from their federal government, who's responsible for border security and the defense of our citizens. So it is, to your point, completely unsustainable, which is why we're stepping up today in anticipation of our Republican majority and saying every power from the purse to investigation and, if and when appropriate, impeachment, so that we can get our colleagues in Washington to have the same sense of urgency that our fellow Texans have. I think it's pretty evident to folks that this president is derelict in his sacred duty to enforce the laws. And I think his accomplice, Secretary Mayorkas, it's equally evident. But we're not Democrats. We believe in due process, and we're going to let the process play out. But we're going to vigorously apply our oversight and the accountability that's been lacking for 2 years. And that's going to start, as my colleague Morgan Luttrell said, day one, January 3rd. And that's what the people expect, and that's what should be expected in this constitutional republic in our great country. When President Trump, who was totally committed to the first job and most important responsibility of a commander-in-chief, to provide for a common defense, when he was asked to consider in his comprehensive border security plan that we put on the House floor, it included DACA, legal status for DACA. Not one Democrat supported it. Not one Democrat supported it. Our commitment is to provide for the common defense and the safety and security against the most imminent threat, which is the crisis that's been created by this administration. I think the Democrat senators are well aware of the policies that were effective in the previous administration that brought illegal immigration down by over 70% and effectively secured the border. So I don't think that our colleagues in the upper chamber are unaware or unclear about those policies. But here's what I do know. Many of those folks in the upper chamber, and certainly our Democrat colleagues, have not demonstrated any political courage to actually implement those effective policies so we can have the outcome of a safer America. I think the answer is plain and clear to every American. They haven't supported it, and if they do support it, they haven't acted on it. And that's why Texans are going to lead the way to force this issue and to force the political will and action in Congress and with our president. It's going to change Texas forever. It's changing our country, and that's why there's got to be the greatest sense of urgency. And look, this is Texas unified on a plan that will work and that has worked. We also know that our governor and state leaders are doing everything in their power. We understand the Constitution empowers states when the federal government fails to protect them, when they are in imminent danger, to use the words of the Constitution. Those states have the right of self-defense, and Texas ought to exercise that, and in fact they are, and this is also our way to affirm that right of self-defense.
State Representative Dustin Burrows also talking about the Texas House investigation into Uvalde. That committee, chaired by Burrows, found systemic failures by both law enforcement and school administration that left the kids and the staff vulnerable to the fate they met that day. Burrows and Lubbock ISD Board of Trustees member Lala Chavez discussed what he found and what Lubbock schools are doing now to prevent this right here in Lubbock.
We analyzed when the 911 calls came in with children on them and the information that was going on, it was not credible to this committee that the officers in that hallway did not know there was children in there. And the doctrine is, if it's an active shooter situation, meaning there is victims that are either being shot or dying, you have to continue over and over and over again to try to do things. And if you can't go through the door, go through the back windows. If you can't go there, maybe go overhead through the ceiling. There's other things they could do. But they try to rationalize it and say, we didn't know it was active shooters, so we treated it as a barricaded subject. And a barricaded subject is, I'm in a room and I'm a hostage and somebody has a gun, but nobody's dying and nobody's being killed, therefore we can negotiate. So he thought he was with the bullhorn negotiating, and there was a rationale and justification for treating it as a barricaded subject. What we found in Uvalde is they had a system that said the doors were supposed to be locked, but there was 15, 16, 17 exceptions to that rule for convenience over and over and over again. But having this software program that ties into existing infrastructure, by the way, paid for by the state, I think will be a really good thing across there, and I intend to really push the state to do what Michigan did and buy these software packages. This person, this shooter, he was lost in the shuffle. And COVID did not help the situation. He stopped coming to school. There was no way to get him in and back into the system where people could actually have that interaction. And it's because there's no teeth and truancy laws left. And I was part in 2015 when I first started where we did not want to criminalize it, and I understand that, but we've got to revisit what we're doing to make sure our superintendents, our principals, everybody else has an ability to make sure these students are coming back and attending so they don't get lost in the shuffle and far down some of these dark paths. And I think that's important. I don't know how to figure out to get people more engaged if they see something to say something. I know that every one of our schools has anonymous reporting mechanisms, and there's things out there where if you see somebody having a mental health crisis or you see people talking about being the school shooter, you can report it. But obviously, there's some communities and some people that just don't know, and we haven't socialized the idea of making it okay. We aren't harnessing the ability to do that. And so one of the things I want to work on, and I don't have the magic solution to it, is how do we make it better that the community can come together and we can understand better what to look for. And if we see something, if we see somebody exhibiting these symptoms, if we see somebody doing these things, if we see somebody walking around doing animal cruelty, that we actually don't just walk away from it, don't just dismiss it, that we say something. It's kind of what we did after 9/11. We came together, that we said, we're not going to have another terrorist attack on our soil. Well, if we as a community come together and we care and we figure it out and we get together and we think about it, I think there's a lot we can do with that.
Well, still to come, Texas is growing. So is our need for dispatchable energy, the kind that can be sent to another part of the state that needs it with a simple on or off switch. So who can make that happen?